Hi there. Welcome to the Schwowin's Nest. My name is Sandra, and I'm so glad you're here. If you like home decor projects with a farmhouse style, sometimes shabby chic, or farmhouse, you're in the right place. Hit that red subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything else I have to share. For my first project, I'm cutting out sort of an oval template from a piece of paper. Afterwards, I decided I really didn't need to do that. I probably could have just freehanded it, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing so you can follow along or create this project for yourself too. Basically, what you need is an oval shape that is a little bit flat on the top and the bottom. Then you can just trace that out onto your fabric. I'm just using some drop cloth that I picked up at my local hardware store, and I've had it in my stash for a while. What I'm going to do is just fold this over a couple of times so I get 5 or 6 pieces. I ended up using 5 pieces for this project, but you could use more if you wanted to. And you could also make it bigger or smaller depending on the look you're going for. I'm using one of the IOD crockery stamps, and this is the marmalade one. There's actually quite a few of them, but this is the largest one. And I'm just using my black ink pad, and this is just one from a local dollar store. And I'm going to just ink it up and then place it right in the middle of one of these pieces of fabric. When I apply the stamps, I always use one hand to hold it in place, and then I use a finger from my other hand to just go around all of the areas and make sure that everything is pressed down evenly. To assemble all of these pieces together, the first thing I'm going to do is glue all of the sides together. I'm putting the hot glue about a half inch in from the edge because I want that edge to stick out a bit. Then I'll just glue them together, then open up the fabric and then add the next piece. Now that all the sides are glued together, I have a tube. I'm going to start at the bottom and start gluing the pieces together. You can see how I'm holding it here. That's how I'm going to glue it. I'll bring one side into the center, glue it down, and then the other side is going to come into the center to meet up with the first piece. It's hard to explain, but I hope you get the idea here when you see me doing this. So the first one was glued to the center, and now the second one is glued to the center, and that gives me a nice flat edge and also makes more of the seams stick out. Once that's completed and everything is glued together on the bottom, you can see here that I almost have a little bag. And I'm just kind of puffing out all of the sides to make sure they're going to look the way I want them to. Now, I probably would have made this pumpkin a little bit bigger just because once you stuff it, you do lose some of the height. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. I'm going to be taking some of this pillow stuffing, and this is just some extra stuff that I had on hand. And I'm going to be pushing it into the center of this little pumpkin bag. And I'm going to make a fabric pumpkin out of it. First, I'm going to add a few rocks down at the bottom just to help hold this guy in place because I have a feeling he's going to be a little tippy. I'm going to continue stuffing the pumpkin and making sure that I push some of the stuffing out towards the edges that are glued together. That's what's going to give the pumpkin its round shape, but then you can see that it has these really neat seams, sort of like inverted ridges of the pumpkin. Instead of them being dented in, they're pushing out. Here you can see the shape of the pumpkin, and I think it looks really neat so far. Next, I'm going to take a piece of stick that I got from my backyard. I actually went out and harvested a whole bunch of different sizes because I knew I was going to be making a lot of pumpkins. I'm going to put the piece of wood in the center, and then I'm going to start gluing the fabric bits right to the stem. And that's just going to make everything stay together well and keep the stem in the center. After that's completed, I'll continue to glue the seams together just by adding a little bead of hot glue and then pressing them together. After that was complete, I started to pull on the strands of each of these little pieces of fabric that are sticking out to give this a frayed look. And I really love how it turned out. It looks really shabby. No project would be complete without adding some embellishments. So I've got some of these leaves I'm going to glue on. I'm using some pip berries that I wrapped around a pencil for the little curly sprigs. And I'm going to add a little bit of boxwood, and that will finish this off. I love how this pumpkin turned out, and I hope you love it too. The wire that I have here is perfect for my next project. It's in a coil, so it's a perfect circle and it's going to be just brilliant. I'm going to be taking my snips and just cutting a circle, just the shape that it is. I don't know where I got this wire from. I know I've had it for many, many years because it was a really big roll, but I'm almost down to my last bit. This is all I have left. So I was really excited to find this in my stash and then get an idea for this pumpkin. The ribbon I'm using for this project is really sweet. It has some orange and white and blue pumpkins on it, and I got it at Michael's, I think, on clearance a couple of years ago. I bought a couple of rolls of it. What I'm doing here is going to be gluing the wire right onto the ribbon just by using some hot glue right in the center of the ribbon and then rolling the wire on top of it. I'm going to continue this process for all of the wires, and I believe I cut out 8 of them. When I got to the end, I cut off the ribbon and then overlapped it about an inch just so all of the ribbon would be connected together, and then that would ensure that the wire wouldn't pop off. To assemble this pumpkin, I'm going to be using hot glue at the very bottom in the center of the first ring. Then I'll be putting each consecutive ring inside the first one so they are all joined together. Once the bottom is secure, I'll add some hot glue to the top and glue those together. If I was to do this project again, I would probably glue these together a little differently. I'm putting the third one on the inside, but I would suggest putting it on the outside. And then the next one will go on the inside again. And then the next one would go on the outside. And I think that would just prevent too much of a pile up of all of this wire and ribbon at the very bottom. And it would just even it out a little bit more. Once it was all assembled, I just gently started bending the wire to give it more of a pumpkin shape, a little bit squatter on the top and wider at the bottom, rather than just a circle. Then I'm going to add some embellishments. It's going to get a little stem, some florals, and a little bit of some curly cues. And this one is done too. I think it turned out really pretty. And I could see making a whole bunch of these with different styles of ribbon. And I think a whole collection would look really beautiful. One thing that I wanted to make sure of when I was doing this video is use all of the items that I have in my stash. So I didn't go out and purchase anything. I'm using everything that I have in my craft room. And I've had these embroidery hoops for a really long time. They came in a set of 3 at a store somewhere. I don't even remember where they were, but I know that Dollar Tree and some other dollar stores carry them, and I think Walmart carries them too. I'm going to just trim off the metal piece using my miter shears because I don't need that metal piece. Then I'm going to also cut the rest of this bamboo piece in half. My idea is to glue the side pieces on and make this look like a pumpkin. So what I'm doing here is just kind of trying to bend the bamboo a little bit so I get more of a rounded shape. If you've ever worked with bamboo before, you'll know that it really doesn't change the shape at all. Whatever it is, you have to leave it as is. But I worked with what I had. Here you can see that I've glued one side already, and now I'm going to do the other side. I got my clamps out because I knew with this bamboo that I would need to hold it in place while the hot glue dried, and I just thought that would be the easiest way to make sure that it wouldn't shift or move. Once the first bit of hot glue had dried just by my holding it, I added a little bit more and then just used the clamp this way to hold it in place while the rest of it dried. Now, while the clamp is there, I'll add some glue to the bottom piece and do the same thing. I found two coordinating pieces of paper in one of my scrapbook packs, which again I have had for a really long time. I'm going to center this, and at first I thought I was just going to use my craft knife to cut around it, but then I decided that it would probably be easier to hot glue it in place first and then cut around. I was having difficulties with my glue gun today, and I had it on the low setting and it kept getting clogged. So I had to put it on high. But because I was taking so much time to add the hot glue, some of the areas of the paper didn't get glued on. So I'll be fixing that later when I have the opportunity to flip it around. Now I'll be able to just use my craft knife and very easily cut out all the excess. I'll do the same technique with the coordinating paper that I'm going to put on the outside ribs of the pumpkin. And again, I was going to start cutting it out. And then I thought, silly goose, you need to just put the hot glue on it first and then cut it out. So that's what I'll be repeating here on both sides. I'm using some watered down acrylic paint to stain the bamboo. The colors are black and dark brown and a little bit of gray, and this is going to give this a little bit of a rustic, shabby look. Now I'll add some embellishments like a pumpkin stem and some curly cues, and I'm going to be making a really messy bow for this pumpkin. And I'm going to just cut up a few pieces of different types of ribbon. I've got some gray, some ivory, and I'm even using some white sort of cotton rope. And I'm going to put those all together and then glue them underneath the pumpkin stem. Now, if you don't have access to any pumpkin stems in your backyard, or perhaps you live in an apartment, or you just don't have the ability to go cut down wood somewhere, you can definitely find all sorts of different sticks in multiple sizes and styles at dollar stores or craft stores. I like to lay down the piece of twine on my work surface and then just put all of the bow strands on top of it. Just makes it so much easier to pick it up and tie it off. I also added some little white wax flowers that have a little hint of green, and that just kind of brought everything together. The last thing I did was just hot glue a piece of twine to the back. I'm going to make another wired pumpkin, but this one is just using this jute twine that is wired. And it's a really pretty creamy off-white color, and I thought that would be perfect. I'm going to be making this one a little bit larger than the one with the ribbon. So I'm just going to take the twine and just wrap it around itself and then make the shape of the circle again and then just wrap it around until I've used all of the twine. Now I'll just take each piece and open it up. And I do have a little bit of a 1 inch sort of space on the top there. You can see where they're not exactly meeting in the center, but that's okay. This is just going to be a little bit of a rustic pumpkin. It's not going to be perfect. And you know what? Pumpkins aren't perfect anyway. Using some jute twine, I'm going to tie the bottom together as well, just so they don't flop around. I'm going to keep this pumpkin fairly hollow. I don't want to fill it up and make it look solid like the other one that I did with the ribbon. So I'm just going to be using some of this green and white pipberry, and I'm going to add some rings here and there. I think I was only able to do 4 or 5 extra loops on each side because that's all the garland that I had. And what I did was use some hot glue to hold it in place each time I went around. To make the pumpkin a little steadier, I decided to glue it right down onto this larger tumbling tower block or Jenga block, whatever you want to call it, just by using a lot of hot glue. I've already got my pumpkin stem on the top. So for this one, I'm going to decorate the inside of the pumpkin because you can see it. So I'm adding a little bit of Spanish moss down on the bottom. I didn't even bother gluing this in place because once I add all of the different pieces to it, it's pretty much going to stay put. I added some dark green magnolia leaves, some boxwood, and now I'm just gluing in a little tiny birch slice from the Dollar Tree. And they come in a whole bunch of different sizes in a pack. And then I'm going to add some solo wood flowers and then a few more different types of greenery and just make everything pop. The last thing to do is add a 2 finger bow to the top of the pumpkin, and I used a little chalkboard label to write the word harvest on it. The last rustic shabby chic pumpkin that I have for you today is using this muslin fabric. You can see it's already got a stain on it. It was just something that I had, and I don't know where it came from. I looked through all of my fabrics and I thought, this is perfect. So I'm just going to gather it together over this pile of stuffing that I put in it, pull all of the pieces up, and then tie it really tightly with a piece of twine. Once you've got it all tied up, you can start moving it around just a little bit, maybe just adjusting some of the folds until you have the shape and look that you like. I'm going to glue the stem of the pumpkin right in the center, and I'm just pushing all the fabric aside so I can get it in there really snugly. If you like a really messy look, you could leave all of these pieces just hanging out the way they turned out when you tied it up. I'm going to tidy it up just a little bit. I'm going to take some of these pieces, of course, cut off that black twine because you don't need to see that. And I'll just glue it down onto the pumpkin or onto the fabric itself. And that will just kind of get some of these unruly pieces looking a little bit more sophisticated. I've got some more pipberry garland, and this is just a white one. I'm going to put some hot glue on the end of it and then just glue it right to the pumpkin stem, just kind of camouflaging that hot glue inside the fabric. For the leaves on this pumpkin, I'm using some of this lamb's ear and I'm going to tuck it underneath some of the fabric. But then for the bottom part of the leaf, I'm going to give it a little bit of a push so it gets a little bit more texture, a little bit kind of a bump in it, so it doesn't look like it's laying really flat. I'll do another one on the other side, and then I'm going to plunk that great big solo wood flower right smack in the middle of them. And this one is done. I just love how he turned out. I think it was the most simple one to do, and it's probably the most elegant out of all of them. I hope you enjoyed my rustic, shabby chic take on pumpkins and got some inspiration to create some of your own. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on anything else I have to share. Bye for now.